Hide and go seek. When I was a kid, my parents would sometimes bring me down to my aunt and uncle's place to stay for the weekend. Mainly I'd spend the time playing with my two cousins who were around the same age as me. They lived on a small farm with plenty of open space, and we could run around doing pretty much anything we wanted. If we thought we could get away with it, the three of us would sometimes cross over to the neighborhood farm about half a mile away. It had been abandoned for decades, with scattering derelict buildings and other structures and surrounding on the property, just being empty, yet begging to be explored. This was, of course, a gold mine for the three adventurous young boys such as ourselves. Especially after my cousins told me spooky stories about how the place was haunted. It was pretty much classic fare. Man goes crazy, axe murders his entire family, hangs himself, returns every night as an angry spirit looking for new victims. Good, grisly stuff. Even at that age, I knew that they were probably making it up, or at least embezzling old rumors. But seeing as how the setting left itself so well to such tales, I allowed myself to buy into it. One afternoon, we decided to play hide and seek. When it was my turn to hide, I ran into a flimsy brown barn that had living quarters on top. Climbed the stairs looking for a good spot. There was still furniture inside, musty and rotting, and personal belongings lay scattered across the floor. I maneuvered over broken dishes and tattered clothes, crumbling books, eventually coming to a small bedroom with a closet. Jackpot. There were even long black dresses still hanging on the rod that I could hide behind. I stepped inside and managed to force shut the folding door. My only illumination was a slit of sunlight that shone through the cracks in the door. From a nearby window, I crouched down with my knees tucked into my chest and waited. Some time passed and there was still no sign of my seekers. I waited just a bit more, debating to myself if and when I should give myself up. After nearly what seemed like an hour, this was starting to get boring. My head dropped. I awoke with a jerk. It was pitch black dark. Drowsy and confused, I forgot for a minute where I was, what I'd been doing. As it slowly came back to me, the realization that it was now night, and that I had been abandoned here filled me with sinking dread to the pit of my stomach. I tried to get up, but a certain cramp in my leg kept me grounded. I squirmed quite a bit, waiting for it to pass, when I hit a door slamming downstairs. Instantly froze. One of my cousins, perhaps? There was a brief period of silence, and then footsteps at the bottom of the stairs. But not just footsteps. There was a thud, too. Every footstep. These weren't the footfalls of a child. They were slow, heavy, and deliberate. I held my breath, praying to any god that it would go away. They didn't. The noise continued to ascend. Step, step, thud, step, step, thud. They reached the top of the staircase after another moment of silence. The walking resumed. This time, along with a steady scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. The footsteps made their way through the rooms and wandered aimlessly through various parts of the apartment. I could smell something faintly putrid. The continued scrape sent cold shivers down my arms and my back. The worst fears were realized when the steps reached my bedroom doorway. They got closer and closer, and finally stopped directly in front of the closet door. I couldn't see a thing. After an agonizing pause, they continued on over to the other side of the room. And out of the doorway again, they faded down the hallway. Scrape. I waited for what seemed like an eternity. There were no more sounds now, and I was trying to build up enough courage to open the door and flee. 3 things happened simultaneously just then. I was bombarded with a smell that I can only describe as flesh. You know the smell of roadkill? I heard a graspy breathing behind me in the dark closet, and I felt hot breath against the nape of my neck. It was enough for me to hurtle myself out of the confines of that nightmare space, relying on memory alone and scant moonlight to navigate through the darkened house. All while I heard the footsteps chasing behind me, closing in with terrifying speed. Step, 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 step. It was clumsy, torturous escape, full of trips and bumps and blind stumbling. I never looked back, at least not until I burst out the front door into the country night. And when I did turn around, I saw absolutely nothing. There were no more footsteps, and nobody was chasing me. That didn't stop me from running all the way back to my aunt and uncle's house. There were police parked in the driveway when I got back. My parents were there too, worried sick. Everybody demanded to know where I'd been. Apparently my cousins still hadn't found me by evening. They returned home to tell their parents. Eventually the police were called in and informed me that they had already scoured every building on the farm. The insane amount of effort I put into the fact that I was not lying about my whereabouts didn't go unnoticed. None of it made any sense. It wasn't until years later that one of my cousins filled me in on the final piece of the story. He and his brother had spent hours searching for me, like they said. But the part they didn't tell anyone was that they thought they had spotted me in the windows of a bedroom I was hiding in. When they got closer, they saw it wasn't me. It was a young boy neither of them recognized, smiling, waving down at them, gesturing for them to come upstairs. That's when they ran back home. All of this happened while I slept in the closet.